Hello and welcome to my channel, Kaylee Creations. I'm Kay and this is part 3 of the Autumn Sunset Garden Fairy mini album set. And in the first tutorial we built the album. The second tutorial, part 2, we put all the papers on and the fold outs and everything on the album and completed the album. And so now we're going to do the little fence that the album sets in, the little box fence, and the wooden plaque. And so, but before we get to that, I did want to go through all the ReneaBouquets products that you will be using. And, excuse me, so we have this beautiful ivory lace, and it comes by the yard, and so you're only going to need 7 inches, which is the length of the album. And so this just goes on the album cover right here. And so I will have a link to all the products in the description box below. And then you have these beautiful board tuck-ins, which is the fall or autumn tuck-ins, and these I used all throughout. I used this on the wooden plaque. I used it on the fence. I used them throughout the album. Just anywhere where you want to tuck in some little fall pieces. And if you watch the previous video, you'll see where I tucked in all the pieces in the album. And we'll go over where I tucked them in on the fence in a little bit. And then you're going to need 2 of these pumpkin laser cut chipboard pieces, and one goes on the album cover and one is on the wooden plaque. And then you also need, and I pulled them out of the packaging, okay, I hid them. You're also going to need one package of these fall corners in the size small, and one goes on to the wooden plaque and one goes on the fence. And then the final piece of beautiful board is this printed beautiful board, and it's the Sweet Garden Fairy. And it comes with the little transparent wing, and you get one facing each way. And so I used this one on the wooden plaque, and I used this one on the fence. And then and I forgot, I reordered all this stuff so I could share with a friend, but I forgot to order the hummingbirds, so I just have this one to show you. But they come in packages of 3, small, medium, and large, and this is the medium size. I used the small on the cover of the album here, and I used the large on the wooden plaque, which I'll show you in a minute. And then we have this, I used this package of butterflies, which is the Champagne Dreams, and I used the small on the album and these 2 on the wooden plaque. And okay, and then I used this salted caramel. I used the large butterfly inside the album. And then I used this butterfly here, and this is the tiny treasure size, and there's come in a package of 5. And I got the gold antennas. You have your choice of color of antennas. So I used gold. On this salted caramel I've got copper, but you could get gold. Either gold or copper I think would work in this album. This Champagne Dream, I prefer the gold with it. It's just softer. And so that's what I have here on the cover. I've got the gold antennas. So I think that is, oh no, it's not quite it. So I also used a couple of, I got these old gold mulberry roses, and I used these little tiny ones inside the album, which I talked about in the last tutorial. And I did dry brush them with white gesso just to soften the color a bit. And then I used on the plaque, I used these honey roses. And so I also had a package of the wild honey roses. So I think I used one of those on the wooden plaque. But, and you know, one of these would work as well. In case you don't want to buy 2 packages of roses, but who never has enough roses? So anyway, so I did buy the honey rose and the wild honey rose. And let's see, I think that's it. So let's get started with the fence. I did start to do this tutorial last night, and without getting into too much detail, I've been having to do my videos really super late at night, and I fell asleep making the video. I literally fell asleep as I was doing the video. So anyway, I had an opportunity to do this afternoon, and so I've already started showing how I did the fence, so it's kind of halfway done. But it's super easy, and you'll see in a minute how easy it is. First of all, you're going to need a piece of chipboard, and oopsie, I'm just ripping it off. I gotta set it down because it's not quite on there. So I used a piece of 12 by 12 medium weight chipboard, and you're gonna cut a piece out that's 2.5 by 5.5, and you're going to paint it with either white gesso, which I think really coats really well. So that was my preferred thing, but you could use some kind of white acrylic paint or maybe a chalk white paint, and anything just to cover it. I did do about 2-3 coats on it, because that chipboard does absorb. And look at this first piece came off anyway because I pulled on it. The gravity of the other side pulled it off. So anyway, so that's what I did to start off. Was you need the bottom of your fence board, and then I did ink it inside, but you don't necessarily have to because it never really shows, so that was kind of a waste of time really. But I mean, if you want to, you can. I did ink up the fence just a little bit with the scattered straw Tim Holtz ink pad, and then I also used that scattered straw on these ends, and on the pumpkin, on the laser cut pumpkin, I used the scattered straw just here and there on the ends, and on all the little bits and pieces too. And so it's really not hard. What I used is this wooden fence from Hobby Lobby, and this is the product here. And it will do 2 fences, so there's quite a bit in this, and it's in the wood section where you get your. It was on the same aisle as the board that I got, and so this is the board, and it's approximately, I think it's like 11 and a half by 9 inches on the back. This is what I used. And it's just a pine board, and I did have to sand these edges just a smidge. And but all this was at Hobby Lobby in the wood section. Okay, and this wire that's around here is very pliable. It's easily to bend. It was easy to cut with just some wire cutters, the wire. And so you only need about a little less than half to do the one fence. And so that's like five of these, I'm not sure what these are called. These little picket slats or pieces of the fence. There's 5 going across the ends, 11 going across the sides, or I guess I should say front and back, and I guess 5 on the sides. So 5 on the sides, 11 on the front and back. And so I just snipped the wire with my wire cutters. And to get it to meet up in the corner, this corner here, I had to really cut the wire down all the way. Because you can see here on this end here where I have not cut it, you can see where the wire, I hope you can see, you can see where the wire's twisted there to keep that wooden slat in. And I had to cut that down to get those 2 ends to meet so that my fence is flush on the bottom of the chipboard. So because I had to cut it so close, which you can see here, I cut it all the way, I hope you can see, I've cut it all the way down to that slat. So it wasn't holding, this wanted to slide right out. So I did have to super glue that together so that this one would stay in place. And so once that was done and dry, then I just started gluing onto my board. And it really will hold once it's all on. The reason it just came off now is because, you know, this is heavy and gravity pulled it right off this chipboard. But once it's all on there, it'll be very secure. And I found for me it was easier to use super glue. I suppose you could use hot glue, but I just found that the hot glue made too much of a gap in between the fence, and it just dried really quick, and it would ooze out and leave little globs of glue, which I don't like. And you know, the super glue was just, for me, better to use. And so you just got to be patient. That's all there is to it. And then so you just glue one side, let it dry, glue this side, and then fold it over, glue this side. You know, and you want to do that because when you bend it, these are going to want to pull away from the chipboard, and you want these fence pieces to be flush against that chipboard as tight as possible. And so if you're patient and let it dry, then you know it's going to work for you. If you try to do it all at once, it's not going to happen. It's just going to pull on one side or the other. So just do one side at a time. If you find that it's not quite fitting right, maybe you need to cut your chipboard just a little bit bigger, or maybe you need to cut it a little bit smaller. So just, you know, but if you do one side at a time, you should be able to push it together and make it fit. Now on that very end, when it comes together here, you're going to want that last slat meeting up with the first one on the corner here. And that's why I cut that wire all the way down, because it was just going to fit snugger, if that's a word, more snug on the on the corner there. And it's just going to kind of overlap and everything. On this one, I had to push that slat higher. I don't know if you can see, it's just slightly higher than this one. And that's okay. I don't think it's really noticeable. I don't think anybody noticed till just now when I said it. So, you know, if your wire still isn't, you know, if your wires are still sticking out too much, just make one a little higher than the other. Nobody will even notice. So that's how I put the fence together, and so I'll just do this one edge again just to show you what I did. So I didn't put it along the chipboard because obviously it's not, you're going to have glue in the middle between these fence pieces. So I put it on the fence instead. I just ran it along the bottom there. And then I just held it there. And I wish, you know, there was some kind of, I wish I had some kind of clamp that would hold it there, but I didn't have anything that would clamp it that way. So I just had to hold it for a bit. And you might have to bend your wire a little bit to get it to go flat the way you need it to. And when they say instant glue, I don't think it's that instant, do you? Anyway, so there, I've got one side done, and I will let that dry and before I do all my sides. And let me just set this over here, actually. Okay, so now decorating the fence. Once you've got it all glued together, and you can choose to ink the fence after it's put together on the board, or you can do it before, either way. And let me put the lid back on this glue. And so don't forget to glitter your, and I showed in the last tutorial how to glitter your beautiful board. And so the first corner I put here on the fence, right here, and you don't want it to stick below the bottom or else it won't stand straight, it'll be tilted. So make sure that this does not go below the bottom of, this leaf does not go below the bottom of the fence. And then it's okay if it sticks out on the left a little bit, because mine does. I think it's pretty that way. And so anyway, just get your, you can either use super glue or art glitter glue, something with a fine tip glue. Probably doesn't matter which glue you use, but, and then just get that on there. And then these flowers here are from Prima, and I talked about that in the previous tutorial. And so there's a package of these, and you get a small and a larger. So I used the small on the front here, just like that. And it is pliable, so if you need to pull it apart or adjust it a little bit, you can, you know, to your liking. And so that just sits right there. And then I used these, and I love these. I love this set of flowers. They're just such a nice size for fillers. And they had the little leaves on the bottom, which I did not use on this project, but and so I just used a couple of these little tiny flowers here on the corner. And then I glued my fairy. I wanted to make it look like she was just barely lighting or touching on the fence or the flowers. And it's almost like she's still kind of in flight, but just kind of at a standstill. And so, and I even wanted her little bare feet to show. So I made sure, because I thought that was so cute that she has little bare feet. So I made sure her little bare feet were showing, and I just glued her on. And so she's really only glued on, if you can see on the back here, she's glued on to the fence, or to the beautiful board, really, not really the fence. If you can see back here, so her feet are glued on to that leaf there that's on this piece of this corner piece, And then this side here, she's glued on back here. And then I think I mentioned in the other tutorial that I removed the black foam tape that was helping secure her little transparent wing in place and put that flower there. I mean, you're not really going to see too much from the back side, but just in case, I just thought it would look prettier than the black foam. And then on the back side, and I thought about doing stuff on the sides, but then I thought I really don't want to. I want to be able to grip it on the sides without anything there, and it doesn't need to be overdone, you know. And so I put, sometimes I do have a problem with editing, so so I said, no, I'm not putting anything on the side. So then I used a large piece on the back here, and I glued this on first, and I kind of just had to play around with it and the wire inside there, and no two are going to be the exact same. This one is folding a little different than this one, and I feel like these leaves aren't as tall as this one. So you're just gonna have to play around with it. You're gonna need 2 packages of these. You're gonna put one of these on the fence and one on the wooden plaque. If you don't like the way this is standing up on the fence, try the other package, because this one really won't matter. It won't really matter which one's on your board or on your plaque. So if this one isn't just kind of cooperating with you the way you like, get the other one from the other package and see if that works. On this one, I did kind of have a hole there, so I put one of these, this rose right here in this package, I put that right there in the center. So if you have a hole, you know, fill it up with, I used this whole package of flowers, so be careful not to use too many on your fence. So just kind of fill it in as you can, and then you can also use, you know, another piece. I could have used another piece of this beautiful board in there too, maybe. And so these are just the little tuck-ins. I used this acorn here. I almost said unicorn. I've got unicorns on the frame because I'm contemplating a project, you know, and I've got unicorns on the frame. But and then this leaf here is the same leaf as this one. And then I put this leaf on the back just to give it some height and some sturdiness behind my flowers. And of course you could, I did have a couple left over, so you could add, you know, a couple here and there more if you like. And you could also add a couple pieces more in your album too. So anyway, that's all there was to it. The fence, that was it. It came together really quick, very, aside from the drawing, it came together very quick and very cute, and I was really happy with it. I'd never done anything like this before, and so I'm probably going to do it more often because I just love how my albums have a home, you know, to set in. I think it's really fun. So that's all there was to the fence. And for the board or the plaque on the back, you can see that I have used this. This is where the second 12 by 12 sheet of paper comes in. The first one was the collage paper that you used in the album, and this is the second one because this is 9 inches by 11.5, so you do need a 12 by 12 sheet of paper to cover the entire thing. Unless you want a piece, well, no, you can't even do that because it's 9 across, so yeah, you're going to have a 12 by 12 piece of paper. And so this is the one that I chose to do. But you know what? If you have this paper already and you have the 12 by 12, whatever, really, it's just the back. So any of the papers will go. I just happened to use this one, and this is called the Fall Flight. So the Autumn Sunset Collection, Fall Flight is the paper. But yeah, if you have some paper and you want to save that one for something else because it's so pretty, that was my favorite paper in the collection. So I used all 5 of them from the 8x8 pad on this project. And so I did use a piece on the front. So it's this paper here, and I cut 3 inches from the bottom and put it across here. So let me get that. That's not it. That's the piece I cut it from. Right here. So this goes on the bottom here, and I don't think any two plaques are going to be exactly identical. This one seems a little more narrow than the one I did, maybe by 1/8 of an inch. So I'm gonna have, because I really didn't have to trim this paper when I put it on my first one. This one tends to be a little more narrow, so I'm gonna have to trim this 1/8 of an inch off. But that's okay, because don't worry about it too much, because you're gonna want to distress the edges. So I distressed the edges with scissors like I did with the entire album, and I did use a bit of ink on the scattered straw on it, on the corners especially, and a little bit on the edges, and not a whole lot, just a little. And but before you put it on your board, you're going to want to paint your beveled edges here, and then the edge here of the plaque. You're going to want to paint that with a vintage white, or some kind of an off-white. It's not a very yellow white, but it's not a very bright ivory either. I found that this color was perfect matching this paper. And so this is the Folk Art Vintage White number 515. And I got this at Hobby Lobby as well. And I only had to use just a little smidge, so but if you have one at home that you can work, that's fine. I just thought I did not have this color white at home, and so I thought this vintage white was perfect. So to paint all the edges, and then distress your paper, and once it was on the plaque and I glued it all down and everything, I distressed it again. I just took once the paper was on, I just took my scissors, and I even just did that across the board, and just made sure it was distressed all the way. And nothing too crazy. I didn't really rip it or anything, but you could do that if you want. And then this piece here, I just used this full sheet. And depending on your plaque, you may have to trim it down a bit. It looks like I'm gonna have to trim about a 1/16 of an inch on each side on this one. So, and then I just make sure you ink it and distress this edge before you glue it down, because this is going to be, you're going to put this one down first, and then you're going to overlap with this one. And it's really not going to be shown a whole lot because the ribbon's going to be covering it, or the lace, I should say. But you just never know what's going to peek out. So I did distress this first before I glued it down. And then on your wooden plaques, you want to just make sure they're really just glued down good, so that they're not going to peel up off your board. You could even, if you wanted, I guess you could use a Mod Podge over it. I just don't know how well that will work with the distressed edges. If you are worried about covering it, I would use a spray rather than like a liquid, to give it a little bit of a clear coat sealing on it, maybe. I did not do that with mine. Then, once the paper was on and I made sure it was glued on, I did even I like to make sure my edges have a lot of glue, and that everything's glued on. And then I use I have a nail file that, you've seen them, those nail files that they use in the salons. That's what I use to sand my boards. So I glue it all on, and then I sanded those edges down like this, just to make sure it's all, it almost like blends it into the board when you do that. And you can do that on chipboard too, by the way, when you're making an album or something. That's what I like to do when I glue paper on a chipboard or wood. And then I, like I showed you before, I took my scissors and made sure it was still distressed, added a little more ink in places if I wanted. And when I got it just right, then I cut a piece of chipboard that is 6 1/4 round. 6 1/4 because that just happened to be the cereal bowl that was sitting next to me when I was contemplating on making this project. I just grabbed the cereal bowl and said, hey, you know. And so anyway, yeah, so 6 1/4, and it's not a very clean cut, but it's not going to be shown. You're going to cover up all these edges. It's just to give it a little more height off the board. And so 6 1/4 circle, and you can cut it out of that same, you have room to cut it out of that same 12 by 12 you used to cut your board for your fence. And then you're going to take this from the 4 by 6 journaling card pad, and you're going to glue this, and it's going to be glued approximately about there. But my suggestion is to lay everything out, and then once you got everything the way you want it, take a picture, and then start peeling off the layers, and then when you get down to here, then just glue it in place. I would glue this in place before I actually glued my circle onto the paper. Anyway, once you've very carefully taken everything off and got your placement for this, and this little thing should be a guide. If you cut a little off, if you have to cut a little off the paper, cut a little off each end, so that this is still in the center, this butterfly, and that's your guiding point where to put this in the center. I think mine's off just a little bit, and that's okay. If it's off a little bit, who cares? And so once this is glued on, then I could just trim and cut that off. Okay, but yeah, it's gonna end up being up higher rather than lower, because you're gonna have your pumpkin laser cut piece here, and I think I had it this way. Yeah, I had it this way. And you're gonna have your pumpkin piece here, and so anyway, and oh, you know what, I do want to say, this beautiful board is so beautifully, intricately cut. I mean, just look at that, how intricate that is. And the reason I mention that is because you do need to be careful with these leaves. I mean, they are just really on there with a little thin thread of chipboard. And if you're too rough with them, which sometimes I am, so when you're inking these or whatever, just make sure you have a delicate hand. This one I had out, and I did not have it, I did not keep it, I got lazy. Sometimes I get lazy. I did not put it back in the little plastic packaging when I was done. I had it in my box, and these 2 leaves fell off. So, you know, just don't be like me and be rough and lazy. You know, when you're not using them or when you're inking them and stuff, just make sure you're, you know, just be careful. I would set it down on something and hold my finger there and then ink the edges with my tool, my little tool. That's how I would ink it. Just hold on to those leaf stems so that they don't come off. Just be very careful. Anyway, but I'd rather they be delicate and cut beautifully like this than be clunky and yucky. So I'm not complaining, I'm just saying be nice to your beautiful board. Okay, so anyway, the beautiful board's gonna sit right here. And so, because I didn't want the words covered up, it's gonna sit higher, I guess was my whole point. And so I'm just gonna show you how I laid everything out generally, and then I will show you a close-up of my board so you can see the placement, and maybe pause the video and you can see where everything goes. And but I will give you the basic 4 things. So you're going to put one of these in this corner, and I did like the idea that my leaves were sticking out almost to the very end here of the plaque. and almost to the point here. You don't want to go all the way down because your lace is you're gonna cover that with your. I used a crocheted lace. ReneaBouquets has a crocheted lace that I will put in the description box below. I used it here on this album. Well, I won't show you that right now. Anyway, I used it on another album. I used it in my Alice in Wonderland album. I think it was, she has like 2 or 3 different styles. I think it was the second one. Anyway, I will put a link to that below. So I just did put the crocheted lace across the edge here to cover up the edge of this paper to make it look like it's all, you know, one thing. And then I did tie the yarn. So I've got the lace here. This is not the ReneaBouquets lace. This is lace I've had in my stash, and I try to use what I have before I buy new. It's just economical for me. And then I used this lace to tie around, and it's actually not lace, it's a yarn. It was in the yarn section that I got quite a few years ago, and a little has gone a long way, and I'm gonna be so sad when it's gone. I'm gonna cry, really, because I absolutely love this trim. And anyway, and then I just wrapped it around, tied it in a bow, and stuck one of those little itty bitty flowers in the center there. So I guess my point was, you don't want to come all the way down with your leaf. You don't want it to be covered. And then your other corner is going to be here, and you know, you can put it, I think I put mine this way, but you know, if it's working better for you to do it this way, do it, but I think it fits better this way with this this maple leaf on the bottom. And once you've got your journaling card glued onto this circle and trim it, then you can glue it to the center of the paper. And then once that part's done, then you can start rebuilding your elements here. But like I said, I did all this first and then took everything carefully off before I glued everything down. So I kind of did a trial run and took a picture and then did it over again. So I put this here, and then I put my my second set of whatever these are. And I put this bottom one here, or this bigger one on the bottom, and then I put the smaller one here, like that. So that was my basic layout. And then on my roses, you're gonna get 3 of this size in that package and 1 of that smaller size. And so, unless you get 2 packages, I did a small and a mini here, but this was from a different package of flowers. But you know what? It's okay, because if you just get the 1 package, this is perfectly fine. It really is. It's gonna look beautiful either way. So don't stress over little things like that. They both work. And or you might choose to put the other bigger one here. But hey, who am I to say don't get both packages of flowers, because I love buying flowers. Flowers are like, butterflies and flowers, my favorite things. Except for the bee. I love the ReneaBouquets bees. Oh my gosh, those bees with the transparent wings. Oh, love those too. I think that was the first thing I ever ordered from ReneaBouquets, was that bee. Anyway, so you're just going to want to, I kind of think you kind of want to angle things out. So it's okay if you got a little more angled out this way. So if you got a few more leaves sticking out here and a few more leaves sticking out there, that's okay to have a little bit of a line going this way. So it's not going to be a perfect circle. But I did just barely, take a few of the tuck-ins and pull it out this way too. But not as much as it's going out this way, if that makes sense. At least I hope my ideas are making sense. And so I just try to kind of, I try to balance things out, but I also try to think in triangles. And what I mean by that is when you're doing colors, it's just more eye appealing if things are done in threes. And so it doesn't have to be a perfect triangle. So for example, if I have this yellow here, I'm going to have this yellow here, and then I'm going to put a yellow here, and that makes a triangle of that yellow. Okay, so you're going to want to think in triangles whenever you do anything with scrapbooking or laying out or your layouts or anything. Try to think, if you have this color of yarn here, try to think in triangles. So I used these honey roses here, and you can use more than what I used. This is your board. If you've got more flowers to use, then use them. Okay, I'm kind of was saving mine for some more projects, but and I'm taking advantage of the fact that I have Prima flowers to match, so then I can use I have a Halloween project that I want to use these with. So but you could definitely use more of the ReneaBouquets roses. It's like, say you weren't able to get all the Prima flowers, use more of these. Those will work beautiful as well. And so I just filled it with these flowers, and then these flowers. Whatever I didn't use on the fence in the album, I used on here. I did have some of these left and some of these left. I used every single one of these because these are great little fillers on my wreath. And so I would just start building up the flowers and making it look like I want, and just play around with it, move them around. To me, that is, some people say it's therapeutic for them to do fussy cutting. For me, it's therapeutic to play with flowers and butterflies. So I just spent a long time just rearranging the way I want it and getting it exactly right. And then don't forget you're going to be having your, make sure that you have a good place for your fairy to set in nicely. And so don't forget that. And she will glue on to layers. So if you can see, if I can show you down here, she is not glued in on the middle there. She's glued in on the edge of her wing there, and see, you could even see that her feet came off. I might need to glue her down a little bit more right there, just to keep her more secure in there, and glue her feet down a little bit more, because her feet are not, she's barely hanging on there. She's hanging on by her wing right now. I need to re-glue maybe. Oh no, she's glued right there. Maybe I need to re-glue right here. But anyway, just have a nice place for her to sit. The same with your hummingbird. I did put extra foam tape underneath him just to keep him under his belly there. He's secured pretty good with that foam tape. There's a little hole there where there's no flowers, and so you don't have to fill the whole thing with flowers. You can have little holes, and then that's where your foam tape will go. And then the butterflies, just make it so that they have, wherever they sit nice. It doesn't have to be exactly where mine are. If they're a little farther apart or one's angled a little differently, it doesn't matter, as long as the way you've arranged your flowers is just sitting nicely. I hope that helps. And if you feel like, oh, I've never done this before, there's really no wrong, okay? Just keep playing with it. Like I said, I will spend hours doing one thing because it's just fun for me, and I want it to be the way I want it. I figure if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it the way I want. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, I think I'll have this done. It's been an hour. Yeah, that's why it takes me forever to get anything done, because I'm sitting here playing with my toys. I feel like a kid in the bathtub, how they just spend hours in the bathtub playing with their toys. So that's how I am with my craft projects sometimes. So anyway, just have fun with it. It's just fun, and you'll be happy with it when you're done because you'll have it just the way you want it. And if it's not, if it looks a little different than mine, that is okay because it's going to be beautiful, right? I mean, how can you go wrong with all the beautiful flowers and everything? So, um, anyway, that's the end of my tutorial. And if you do have any comments, please let me know if you have a finished project you'd like to show me. I'd love to see your finished project when it's done. I'd love to see how it came out. And so if you have any comments or questions, I will try to contact you as soon as possible. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe because there's going to be more beautiful projects coming. And also, if you click on the little bell, you'll be notified whenever I have a new project. So anyway, thank you for watching and have a great fall season. Hopefully you live somewhere where it's beautiful and you're enjoying fall. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.